Welcome guys, this is Ola from Stop Me Oh channel. Today we are discussing something that I haven't properly discussed up until now, and I felt like now is the time to do it. I will be discussing Witcher books today, particularly the first one called Blood of the Elves, because I recently reread it and I want to talk about it. I want to discuss it. I will try to keep it spoilers free, so I will just focus on the main story that you can read about on the back of the cover anyway, so I won't be reviewing anything major. However, I want to discuss the basic idea behind the books, my story when it comes to the books, how they influence the games and the TV show and all of that. Like, I really want to discuss all that. I feel like it's interesting, and yeah, let's jump right into it. Blood of the Elves by Andrzej Sapkowski. That's a book written in Poland in the early 90s. Like, it was following two other books that Sapkowski wrote. Both included short stories. They weren't really short. One was called Sword of Destiny, and the other one was called The Last Wish. They both introduced main characters of the whole saga. So obviously Geralt, who's a witcher, Yennefer, who's a sorceress, Ciri, who's child, a surprise child when it comes to Geralt. Like, if you watched the show or played the games, you would know. Jaskier, Triss, some dwarves. So when it comes to the books, there are these two ones with short stories. There are some other short stories too, but these are two main ones. And then there's the saga that includes 5 books. The first one is called Blood of the Elves, that I recently finished reading again. It was published in 1994 in Poland, so we are talking about the time when Poland just got out of USSR regime, so the communistic regime, in the 1989. Sapkowski wrote first 2 books, the short stories, in the 80s. He actually did it as part of the contest. He made up Geralt for the sake of a contest in this very popular Polish newspaper about fantasy. He actually won, so that's how Geralt came to be. He did it for his son, partially. Then he decided that he wants to continue that entire saga, so he did, and you know, the rest is history. As you know, following the books, CD Projekt developed a game called Witcher. It was the first one. Andrzej Sapkowski didn't really give his blessing to that game. You probably heard about the whole legal dispute. If you want me to, I can make a separate video about that, because it's pretty interesting. Like, Sapkowski only took a small amount of money when it comes to giving away Geralt rights for the sake of the game. He never really believed that the game would be a major project, that he never believed that it would be as popular, that it would be widely considered one of the best games ever created. Then he decided, once it actually happened, that he needs more money, so yeah, they settled. There's a whole thing about that, so yeah, like I mentioned before, if you want me to, I can record a video about that. But moving on. Then, following the success of the games, Netflix decided to create a TV show. Season 1 was already out. I made some reactions to the episodes. Most of them are on my channel, not all, because Netflix took down some. What are you gonna do? Season 2 will be released this year, so I'll be recording reactions as well. And I figured now would be the time to reread the books. Now, when it comes to my own history with Sapkowski, with the books, I'm from Poland, so Witcher is widely considered a national treasure in Poland. Everyone knows Sapkowski, everyone knows Witcher books, most people have them at home whether they read them or not. I haven't actually read them for many years. I knew Geralt, I knew Witcher. There was even this pretty average TV show created in Poland in the 90s. It wasn't the best, but I mean, yeah. And personally, I decided to read the books prior playing the games, way before the TV show as well. Like, I wanted to play Witcher 3, being the gamer as I am, but I didn't really want to play it without having played the first one, the first Witcher game. And then again, I didn't want to play the first Witcher game without having read the books. It didn't feel right for a Polish person to, yeah, play the games without reading the books. So I decided to read the books first. And I have to admit that at first I was pretty confused, because I read Blood of the Elves for the first time around 6 years ago. It was actually kind of hard to follow up who's whom and what are they doing and what are the relations between them, because there's so much backstory in the short stories. Sword of Destiny and The Last Wish books, short stories. So when I first read Blood of the Elves, I haven't read the short stories, and that led me to being confused a lot of the time. I feel like if you want to read the book, you'd have to read the short stories first. I mean, it's totally worth it. They're amazing, and they introduce so many interesting ideas that are pretty important in the saga itself. So I highly recommend reading the short stories prior reading the saga. Yeah, so I read the first book, then I read the second one, I started the third one, and I don't remember why, but I sort of abandoned it. I think I had something going on, so yeah, I just never went back to it. I was meaning to, but then the more time passed, the more I felt like I wouldn't really remember where I finished, what was going on. So at that point I started playing the first Witcher game. I absolutely loved it. Then I had some issues with Witcher 2, so I skipped that one, but I'm still considering playing it actually on my channel. And then I played Witcher 3 on my channel. That was the biggest playthrough on my channel, and it brought many interesting people, so I very much appreciate that. The whole gameplay is out there on Stop.me.io channel. I will leave a link, so if you want to check it out, it's there. At that point, I decided it's time to revisit the books, because I knew that the TV show was coming, and I knew that I wanted to record reactions to the TV show, but I really felt like I didn't want to be yet another person that does it without having read the books, sometimes without playing the games. I didn't want to be that type of a person. Like, I felt like I needed to give you something more, that I needed to present some sort of background knowledge, and that's why I started revisiting the books. I actually decided to reread all of that. So I first started with the short stories. I read both books with the short stories like 2 years ago. They were both amazing. I loved both of them. They were so interesting. They introduced Yennefer. They explained her relationship to Geralt, because when you jump into the first book, Blood of the Elves, it's already created, right? The relationship between Geralt and Yennefer is already something that has like a base, and you don't know it without reading the short stories. They introduced Jaskier, so sort of a best friend of Geralt, and it was really helpful. Because I kept borrowing these books from people around me, I decided to order my own book, so I have it all, that entire saga. You can see it right here. I think it looks really dope. And I started rereading Blood of the Elves. At this point, it made all the difference in the world. When I first read it, I wasn't familiar with the games. The TV show did not exist, except for the Polish one that wasn't the best. And right now, when I was rereading Blood of the Elves, it was all different to me. I understood it all. Everything made perfect sense. It was so damn interesting. And I have to say, I admire Sapkowski so much. He wrote an amazing story. And if you think about all these famous fantasy books, like, I don't know, Lord of the Rings, for example. It feels so majestic, right? Everyone's heroic. Everything's so big. All the characters are brave. I feel like Witcher isn't like that. I feel like Witcher is in a way more sensitive. Like, it introduces characters that aren't perfect. Characters that are sort of rejected by the society. I feel like these books present so well what it means to be tolerant, what it means to be open-minded. It's funny because in Poland, Witcher is very much popular among people that are also a bit conservative, people that really like the idea of a strong male character, right? And would feel threatened by strong female characters sometimes, for example. And they consider Geralt their own national hero. But I feel like the story of Geralt is actually a lesson of tolerance for everyone. If you're reading the books carefully, you will notice that Sapkowski is so sensitive when it comes to that. He's telling us a tale of what it means to be rejected, of what it means to be an outcast, a vagabond, what it means to be alone, and what it means to find someone and create a family that is not a traditional type of a family, that is a family by choice. And I'm talking about Geralt, Ciri, and Yennefer there. Now, this is not a spoiler, like, this is a story of Geralt, Ciri, and Yennefer, how they found each other, how they decided to become a family, not by blood, but by choice. They protect each other, they help each other out. And the first book showed us how Geralt and Ciri care for one another, how they're slowly becoming close, as well as Yennefer and Ciri. Sapkowski is discussing many other issues as well, and let me remind you, that book was written in the 90s, yet you can find approval of ecology in there. He's discussing Brooklyn Forest and how people devastate forests and how people devastate nature and how we are the ones who are ruining that world. Apart from intolerance, he is discussing hatred. A very important part of the book is Scoia'tael elves that are attacking humans and humans starting to hate on them. It almost reminds me of World War II when Hitler was trying to build up hatred towards Jews. It must have been on Sapkowski's mind when he was writing that. It feels too obvious in a way. Sapkowski is also trying to tell us how it is important to have religion and state separated. All of these are ideas that are pretty up to date, but yet the book was written 30 years ago. So like I said before, it is not majestic story like Lord of the Rings. It feels more mundane. It feels like it's dirty. It feels like our characters aren't perfect. In fact, they are far from it. Maybe they aren't selflessly heroic, but they are very, very real. That's why I feel like it was a wonderful story about the outcasts, the tale of the outcasts. How they found each other, how they chose each other, how they're protecting one another. The moment I put down that book, I grabbed the second one, Time of Contempt. And I'm reading it right now. It's just as wonderful, it's just as great. So I highly recommend reading these books. Start with the short stories, give it a go. You will have a lovely time reading them. They're very interesting. It is really worth it to have the full experience, to read about Geralt, Yennefer and Ciri. If you're a gamer, you can play the games. They're just as wonderful. And CD Projekt, they're major book fans. When they were creating Witcher, they were so respectful when it comes to what Sapkowski created, even though maybe initially he didn't actually approve of the games. I cannot not mention about the Last Wish side quest in Witcher 3, which complemented the Last Wish short story in the books. Also, one more hint. If you have a look at episodes titles, Witcher Season 2 episodes titles, there is an episode titled My Dear Friend. And if you read the first book called Blood of the Elves, you will know why this is a major Yennefer and Geralt hint. Finally, I have to mention my favorite part of the books. It's actually Geralt and his doubts. Geralt is constantly questioning himself. He's wondering if he's a human, if he's a monster. People question Witcher's morality. They don't think they have any. They don't think that they have any feelings. People think that Witcher's emotions were taken away from them. And the books show us so well how they weren't, how they still feel so much. So maybe it's not as heroic as Tolkien or C.S. Lewis, but it's a genre of its own, worth checking out. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and stay safe. This was Ola from Stop Me Old Channel. Bye.